It's September 22nd. We are 42 days away from election 2020. And if you're like me, you forgot to check your registration. Not today, folks. It is National Voter Registration Day. Stay tuned and we will get it done. After we check, we're going to talk with former New Jersey Governor Christine Todd Whitman, New Jersey bestselling author Harlan Coben, and a man who has never voted Democrat in his life but is voting for Joe Biden. And now, a co-founder of the Lincoln Project and host of Vote for America, it's Jennifer Horn.
And welcome to Vote for America. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am so glad that you're with us. We're going to be here. This is our first show, first of all. You're tuning in for the inaugural show of Vote for America, and we're really excited about it. We're going to be here every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday from now until Election Day so that we can make sure that you have the data that you need to make informed decisions, the tools that you need to make sure that your voice is heard on Election Day, and that we give you the strategies and the language and the stories that are going to be helpful for you as you try to persuade those people in your life to join you in voting for Joe Biden on Election Day. And that's what Vote for America is all about. Good people from across the country coming together to do good things, to make a better world for our children and our grandchildren as we move forward from here. Today is National Voter Registration Day. At the Lincoln Project, it is always Voter Registration Day, but we are celebrating it in particular today. We want to make sure that you're going to have all the information you need to get registered. But first, I want to introduce you to my co-host. She is my favorite independent voter, a good friend of mine, and the founder of the Marin Group, Lisa Senecal. Hey, Lisa, it's good to have you with us today.
Hey, Jennifer, I'm so excited to be here. This is going to be a lot of fun.
I'm really glad you're here too. It is going to be a lot of fun. You and I are going to get the opportunity now, from now to Election Day, to be here talking to voters from across the country. This show is going to be about you, the voter. We want to hear from you. We want to know what your concerns are. We want to listen to what your fears and your concerns are about this upcoming election. We want to make sure that we answer your questions, and there are going to be lots of opportunities for you to join us and to be part of the show. You can join us on social media at #VoteForAmerica. And a little bit later in the show, we'll even give you a phone number where you can call in and leave us a message and possibly end up being on the air with us at some point as well. So like I said, Lisa, voter registration. Every day is Voter Registration Day at the Lincoln Project. And for people like you and I who care so much about making sure that people in our country get engaged in this election, I assume that you are a registered voter.
I am a registered voter. I am one of those voting geeks who actually gets really excited about primary and general elections, and I love voting in our local elections. So it's a wonderful opportunity that we have to take part in our democracy, and we should really cherish it and make sure that we bring friends along when we do it. So we're making sure we have everybody getting out there and voting in this incredibly important election.
Bring your friends, bring your children, teach them how important it is, get everybody out there, make sure they know all about it. Although, contrary to the president's advice, kindly only vote once. I do. Vote early,
Yes.
but vote once. I think it's always important to remind people there are actually federal consequences if you try to vote more than once. So let's give people a little bit of information. Let's start out today by giving them some information about it. But if you have moved, for example, since the last time you voted, it's possible that your registration that you need to re-register depending on where you live and how it works. So let's start by giving you some information. You can go to lincolnproject.us/vote, click on the How to Vote button, then click on Check your registration. It's that easy. If you're not registered, in most cases, you'll be able to register online. It'll just take a minute or two. It is so important. And Lisa, your kids are approximately this age, college-age children. We need, they need a little bit of, extra information, I think, at this point. And, you and I have talked about this before when we've chatted, Lisa. It's a different kind of a year for these college-age kids. Normally, they're accustomed Republicans and Democrats kind of coming on campus and getting them organized and giving them all the information they need. But so many of our college students are not on campus this year.
Right, they're not on campus, and even the places where they are on campus, nothing is functioning the way it normally would be. So the voter registration drives that they normally have are being done differently, and voting is going to be done differently, different locations on campus. So kids really need to make sure that they're educating themselves about how to vote. A lot of kids, if they're away at college, they need to make sure they are getting registered and they have their application in for their absentee ballots, because if they're still claiming wherever it is they're from as their primary residence, that's where they need to be voting. And we want to make sure with the mail that we are getting absentee ballots sent back in very early this year to make sure that every vote is counted.
That's right. If you're voting by mail this year, to Lisa's point, make sure you get that absentee ballot filled out and in the mail as soon as possible. We want to make sure that your voice is heard. That's what this is all about. That's what America's all about. Our whole system here is built on this foundational idea that we, the people, get to have the last vote, the last voice, that ours is the voice that should be heard. So everybody, National Voter Registration Day, lincolnproject.us/vote. Everything that you need to learn to get registered to vote in your state should be there right now. Lisa, one of the things that I think that we should talk about before we really get into the meat of the show here is, and folks by now know about this. I think it was last Friday that Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away, and I just wanted to take a minute to talk about her a little bit, because one of the things that I was really struck by was watching other people's reactions on social media to all of this. It just sort of reaffirmed something that I've always felt and thought about her, is even though the justice was known to be a liberal justice, or a more liberal judge, I feel like she meant so much to women in particular across the country. Like, really, regardless of for me, I'm a conservative. I never thought about conservatism and liberalism when I thought about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And she had this one quote from a long time ago that, just from the moment I heard it, like, it's always stuck with me and really sort of informed the way that I think about feminism from a conservative point of view. And I don't remember the exact words, but it was something like, it was about women's rights and equality for women. And it was something about women belong everywhere that decisions are being made. And it's such a simple, basic idea that for you and I, it almost seems impossible to believe that there was a time when that was not the assumption, when that was something that women had to fight for.
Yeah, she has an incredible legacy that she's left, and a huge part of it is that her insistence that women belonged. She belonged at Harvard. She belonged, standing before the Supreme Court. She belonged on the Supreme Court, and she broke down just an incredible number of barriers that women had faced. And the degree to which we have equity and equality now, she moved the bar such an amazing distance, and all of the all the steps we take in the future will build off the work that she did. So yeah, she was really a remarkable woman.
So much. You're right. And not just for women. And when you look at some of the cases that she took on, it's not just women who have benefited from, equality and rights, the work that she did. And I've said this a couple times in the last few days, she was everything that anybody would want their daughter to be. She was a strong woman of extraordinary character who was principled and fought for what she knew was right. And that just moves me. And honestly, that's what we're trying to do here. You and I, bringing people together from across the country, no matter what their backgrounds or their differences might be, to come together in this moment of integrity, this moment of principle, and do the right thing for our country. I was tweeting about this a little bit last night, Lisa, because in addition to being very moved by the legacy of Justice Ginsburg, it has opened up this whole political roiling pot of it, which we knew it would. We knew that if a seat opened up
Yep.
at this point, that this is exactly what would happen. And I tweeted about it because I wanted to know what our other friends and voters and other folks out there thought about it. Just asking, what do you think about the whether or not the Senate should wait until after the election to go forward and try to fill this seat? We know that the president has the constitutional right and the Senate has the constitutional responsibility. But I really wanted to know what folks out there who are listening, thought about this themselves. And it's interesting because just like, their responses have really sort of boiled down into two or three different
Hmm.
areas. And the first one maybe shouldn't be a big surprise, Lisa. The biggest block of responses, and we got hundreds of responses to that, was that of course the Senate should wait. And I thought it was
Right.
interesting that was the majority response, because like I said, constitutionally they don't have to.
Right. They don't have to. We certainly saw something different happen in 2016 around Merrick Garland. You would hope there would be consistency, but I think one of the ways, we're already in an election this time. People have already started voting, so it's not even that we're just in election year. We're in the middle of an
Right.
election, and um, I think it's a risky proposition to push forward without really having the country behind you. And I don't get the sense that the country is behind the decision to push
Right.
ahead quickly, and I certainly don't get the sense that women are comfortable with it. And boy, women can make their voices heard. We don't have trouble doing that, and I think we showed that in 2018. So they may be doing
Yeah,
this at their peril.
I think you're right. And we know that women are going to have a loud voice in this election. And what you just said,
Yeah,
that was kind of the next group of respondents that we had in this, that an overwhelming number of them saying, this isn't just like anything that's happened before, because it's not that this has happened in an election year. This has happened in an election. People in Virginia
right.
started voting last week. There are thousands, I don't know how many tens of thousands of ballots that have already been cast, absentee ballots coming in. And so to try to sort of influence something so critical in this moment is certainly political. You can't call it anything else. It's not
Right.
about making the people's voices heard. And I kind of, Mitch McConnell has this crazy convoluted excuse for why this is okay, where he goes back and talks about the 1800s and these weird what he's calling precedents. There are no precedents. This is different. This is different than
Right.
that. So it's, and I gotta say, Lisa, as a Republican, it's not that I'm surprised to see the rank hypocrisy that's coming out on this particular issue, but
Yeah.
it's disappointing. It's disappointing. People like Lindsey
Yeah.
Graham, who last time around said,
Right.
if it happens when we're there, we won't vote. We won't bring someone forward. And looks like we
Right.
are. There were some other interesting tweets. There's another one that talked about, and I thought this one was particularly interesting from a political strategy point of view, when they said, don't make a big deal about the SCOTUS thing, because we're playing right into President Trump's hands. And it's smart. They're smart with that, because if we allow ourselves to get dragged into this big debate about whether or not somebody should, the president should take advantage of his constitutional right here to appoint somebody, get drawn into the issues around a candidate, we are going to be drawn off of the conversation that's really important in this election. And that is that Donald Trump
Right.
is unqualified to be president. Poses a threat to the future of our country, to the safety and well-being of our families, and we all need to come together and defeat him. So I hope that we don't get dragged in to the whole conversation, to the point where we aren't
Yeah.
thinking about what's really important.
Right. And the important one of the important points I've heard made several times now is that the amount of time that this is going to take, the attention of the Senate to be able to move this
Right.
forward and get the nomination to the floor, that is time that needs to be spent figuring out how the American people are going to be helped in their struggle against COVID. And the
Yep.
more time is being spent arguing over a Supreme Court nomination, the less attention is being spent to really critical issues right now that are affecting people's lives this moment, and every moment,
You're
whether
right.
it's life or economically.
And the federal response to the coronavirus has been so horrible. And listening to you say that just reminds me, like, there's another step. I was just reading in the New York Times this morning that we do not have a federal plan in place to track the spread of the coronavirus in schools now that we have sent our students back to school. It's on it, and it's not even a state by state. You know, in some states it's by district, in other states they aren't reporting it, and it's got the potential to be a huge mess. And since we're
Yes.
talking about our kids going back to school and the coronavirus and all these other important issues, I'm really pleased to be able to welcome our first guest. Lisa, our first guest on our first show. I'm really excited. This is a woman that I have a tremendous amount of admiration for, not just her time as governor and the amazing work that she also did at the EPA. I don't know if you realize, Lisa, we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of the EPA this year. It's kind of
Fantastic.
extraordinary to think about. Um, but the former governor of New Jersey, Christie Todd Whitman, is also the chairwoman of the steering committee for Republicans and Independents for Biden, which is an important project here at the Lincoln Project. People can find us on social media at R's and I's for Biden, the number 4 at R's and I's for Biden. I'm so pleased to welcome the former governor of New Jersey, Christie Todd Whitman. Good morning, Governor. How are you?
No, it's good to be with you. I'm fine.
I'm really happy to have you with me today. I was thinking about you when I was reading that story in the New York Times about there being no federal plan to track the spread of the coronavirus in our schools now that our kids have gone back to school. And this is something that you and I have talked about before. We both have grandkids. Although you're winning on the grandkids contest, you're ahead of me as far as how many. But we've
For the
chatted
moment, for
a
the
couple of
moment.
weeks ago for the moment. Well, listen, I'm trying to inspire my children. I'm doing the best I can. The 3 that I have are the joy of my heart, and I'm ready for more. But you and I have talked about this. Your grandkids are back in school. They're this of school age, so are mine. This is a serious concern.
Oh yes, I mean the older 4. Well, they're not all. They break out, but 4 of them in the school they go to, they not only have to wear masks, but they have to wear face shields all the time.
Mm.
If they can't be 6 feet away from somebody, and for the 2 that are 10 and 8, it was tough. It was really tough for them, and they felt it, and they felt disoriented by it. The other 2 in their public school, they only have to wear a mask, and so that's been a little easier, and they've taken to that. It's been all right, but you know the parents are worried. Is this the right thing? How long is it going to last? And I must say that the learning online was very spotty last year because I don't think the teachers have been given enough time to prepare for how you teach online. It's very different. And it really takes a self-starter as far as the kids are concerned, or else the parents standing over them every minute. Actually, my daughter made the boys, her 2 oldest, sit at the table in the kitchen with their computers turned so she could see them to make sure they were doing what they were supposed to be doing. So it's a huge load on working parents, too.
And that's one of the biggest challenges, I think, with the coronavirus in general, regardless whether you're talking about, having kids at home or trying to learn. And any family is juggling so much more. The normal stresses, everyday life.
Right.
Are your kids getting educated? Are you making the money to feed them? Can you pay your bills? It's just the anxiety and the additional challenges, I think, are really overwhelming for a lot of families right now.
Well, they are, and we haven't paid enough attention to that, I don't think, as far as offering support to families, emotional support, psychological support to families that are struggling and trying to figure this out. And the fact that you say and point out that we don't have a national plan for tracking kids as they go back to school is really inexcusable, but it's so emblematic of the way this administration has approached this whole virus, the whole COVID-19, the novel coronavirus. They just don't want to know about it. This president, I don't think it's the whole administration, but this president, he doesn't play to his strengths. Clearly, he's not the leader we need at these times, at least in my opinion. And he's shown that, and he doesn't care about anything if he feels that it's against his re-election potential, he doesn't want to hear it. And at a rally, I believe it was last night or yesterday, at some point, he said, "Oh well, it's really only old people who have underlying conditions who die. It doesn't affect the young, and it's really not a big deal." We just passed 200,000 people who've lost their lives to this disease, and that doesn't even count the incredible impact it's had on our economy. For businesses that have closed down, many of the small businesses will never come back. They can't come back from this. And if we'd just taken it seriously earlier on, more seriously, as soon as we knew things like masks, social distancing, washing your hands were the basics, that's what the president should have said. So the states had a clear understanding of what was the minimum amount that they needed to do, and then they could have developed protocols depending on different businesses. And we should have had that for them from the very beginning. And now the same thing's being repeated in schools, and we see what happens. It stutter starts. They go back in school. School's closed down a day later, a week later. We've seen that all of this happen, and that's the worst thing for getting our economy back on track. Not to mention getting this virus under control.
And just keeping our families safe. I'm sorry. There's an old saying that's ignorance is bliss. I was going to say with Donald Trump, the problem is that ignorance is dangerous. Ignorance is deadly. Yeah. I'm sorry, Lisa. Go ahead.
That's okay. Governor, I would imagine I know one of the frustrations that I've had throughout the COVID-19 epidemic has been that not only the lack of federal leadership, but that the members of the president's party have not held his feet to the fire, making sure that insisting that there was a federal response plan when their states weren't getting what they needed, insisting that we figured out a unified response, and we didn't look state by state and leave people hanging out there trying to fend for themselves. I'd love to hear, what you think about the silence to a large degree among members of Republican members of Congress.
I wish I could answer that. I don't understand it. If they really appreciated their oath of office and put that ahead of their political concerns, their Republican concerns, I think we'd be in a much better place. But for so many of them, they have been cowed into believing that they can't win re-election if they cross Donald Trump, and all they seem to care about is winning re-election. There's a life after politics. I found a very good one. Thank you very much. But it's incredible to me that we have so many. For instance, you mentioned in talking before about Mitch McConnell and the duplicity of saying in 2016, no, we can't possibly hear a Supreme Court nomination in an election year. The people have to decide. The thing you need to remind those Republicans, this is not a majority president. He's a minority president. Yes, he won fair and square with the Electoral College, but he did not garner the majority of the American vote. So if you really want to hear from the American people, you wait and hear, because they were not supportive in the beginning. And if 2018 was any kind of a referendum on this administration's performance to date, it wasn't a very resoundingly positive one. So really, the hypocrisy in rushing this through is mind-boggling. And I'm extremely disappointed by those Republicans who have enabling this. And I was really disappointed to hear Mitt Romney say he wouldn't stand in the way of it. You have two women, one who's up for re-election this year and one who's not, both lead the way saying, no, this is wrong. And Lisa Murkowski said it well when she said, what's fair is fair. What they did to Merrick Garland in 2016, they should handle things the same way now in 2020. You just can't keep doing this. And no wonder the American people have lost faith in their government and this Congress. I mean, they see the hypocrisy, whether they're for rushing through a justice or not. They know deep down inside that this is just not right, given what happened in 2016. And that's why they're so frustrated and angry. I don't blame them. And the fact that the Congress hasn't gotten, we may actually shut down the government. They weren't able to find any common ground on keeping the budget going. It's just mind-boggling to me how these people have become total cowards, really, so afraid of losing their jobs and not doing the job for which they were elected. And that's what it should. Service is public service, serving the public, not your party, not your personal ambitions.
Governor, I can't tell you how much I appreciate hearing you say that, especially as a fellow Republican. And you're a Republican who really cares about preserving the party. Hoping for a new path of leadership for the party after this. And I just want to remind folks before you take off on us, you've taken on a very public role of leadership. You're the chairwoman of the steering committee for R's and I's for Biden. You're literally out there advocating for a Democratic nominee for president. And I think that takes a tremendous amount of courage. I'm grateful that you are, like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, frankly, a woman who is willing to stand in the moment and stand on principle and just sort of call it like it is. So I hope that we have a lot of those Republicans out there listening to us today, and I'd love them to hear from you before you go. What is your message to them on Joe Biden? Why is it okay for lifelong Republicans now to go out there and cast a ballot for the Democratic candidate?
Well, first of all, lifelong Republicans should know Donald Trump is no Republican and never has been. And in Joe Biden, you have somebody who has proven his decency. He's proven he's strong. He has shown not only an ability, but a willingness to work across the aisle to bring people together to solve the problems that we face today. He's also shown a character trait that I don't think our president could come close to, which is he was willing to put aside any kind of personal feelings he may have had about how Kamala Harris attacked him in that one debate by saying, if this is the most qualified person for this position, if this is the person I think is the right person, then I'm going to put personal feelings aside and pick that person. That's something this current president would never do. He's really patriotic. He believes in the Constitution. I mean, Joe Biden, I am happy to be supporting Joe Biden. It's not just an alternative to Donald Trump. He's the right person for us now. He will help bring this country back together. We'll be respected once again internationally, which we certainly aren't now. He knows who are our enemies and who are our allies, and he will recognize that and try to rebuild the relationships that this president has destroyed. And really, it's made us a lot less safe. He's also something that's close to my heart, which I think should be close to all of us. Joe Biden understands that climate change is real. It affects us in 1,000 different ways, and we've certainly been seeing it with the fires and the storms along the Gulf Coast and throughout the Atlantic and in the Pacific as well. It's a destabilizing force. We need to address it, and Joe Biden has proposed a way to do that and continue to build our economy in new and exciting ways. So I'm very positive on Joe Biden. It's not just negative on Trump, of which of course I am, but positive on Joe Biden.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. You really have taken a very principled, courageous stand on that. And those of us who join you in it, we know the kind of blowback that comes with it. So I just so appreciate your leadership. Governor, thank you so much for being with us today. Enjoy those grandkids.
Pleasure.
I hope you have a great day. We look forward to having you back. Thank you.
You too. Thank you.
So that was Governor Christine Todd Whitman. And Lisa, I don't know if you realize that she headed up the EPA under President George W. Bush, and they're celebrating the 50th anniversary now of the founding of the EPA, which is a significant moment in our country's history. So it was great to have her with us. And I just want to remind all of you that you are watching Vote for America. We're going to be here every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. I believe that's 10:30 p.m. Pacific time. And we want this show to be about you. We want it to be something that we're a place where you can come and get your questions answered and get the information that you're looking for and try to sort through the chaos and the craziness that we're all kind of living with so that you have the real information, the honest information that you need to make informed decisions and to make sure that your voice is heard on Election Day. So I hope you'll keep coming back and joining us as we continue between now and November 3rd. After this, we are going to have the opportunity to talk to a really interesting guy, best-selling author Harlan Coben. But first, here's the latest from the Lincoln Project.
So often in life, things that you regard as an impediment turn out to be a great good fortune.
Men and women are persons of equal dignity, and they should count equally before the law.
The idea of a young girl aspiring to be a judge, even more Supreme Court justice, is a wonderful thing.
The notorious RBG.
Do you have some good advice you might share with us? Yes, I do.
Be someone who holds fast to her convictions and her self-respect.
Be independent. Don't be distracted by emotions like anger, envy, resentment. These just sap energy and waste time.
I am proud to nominate for Associate Justice of the Supreme Court, Judge Ruth Bader Ginsburg of the United States.
People ask me sometimes, when do you think it will be enough? When will there be enough women on the court? And my answer is, when there are 9.
I'm a conservative, want conservative judges on the court. This may make you feel better, but I really don't care. If an opening comes in the last year of President Trump's term and the primary process is started, we'll wait to the next election. I want you to use my words against me.
You're on the record.
Yeah.
All right.
Hold the tape.
Lindsay Musco and the Lincoln Project are responsible for the content of this ad.
America, thank you so much for staying with us. It's great to have you here. And I just want to remind you, you can be part of the conversation. We're going to continue talking about all the issues that are important from now until Election Day. And we want to hear from you. You can reach out to us on social media using the hashtag Vote for America and continue to be part of that conversation. Look for our tweets, look for my tweets. We'll be interacting with you as we go forward. And we're just really glad that you're here today. Lisa, I'm excited about this next guest. He's an interesting guy. And I don't know if you are a reader of thrillers and mysteries, but for those of our folks, you see, yeah, for those of our listeners who are, they're going to recognize his name. Harlan Coben he has 75 million copies of his books and prints, which, I mean, when you think about that, like, that's just overwhelming to me. He writes thrillers and mysteries. His novels are set primarily in New York and New Jersey. But what's interesting about him is that while this is his life kind of on this side, he's a politically engaged guy. He has supported Republicans and Democrats in the past. Up until the Trump presidency, he didn't really get involved, didn't talk about politics publicly so much. But he's got some interesting things to say now that I thought our friends would be interested in hearing. So I'm really happy to welcome to the show author Harlan Coben. Good afternoon, Harlan. How are you?
Good. How are you guys today?
We are doing terrific. We're really happy to have you here. I so appreciate you joining us. I really appreciate the fact that you are somebody who has not really gotten involved or try to have kind of a public voice in politics, but now there's something happening in the world and you kind of feel obligated. And like a lot of other folks who have spoken out against this president, it potentially comes at a cost for you. So I'm really pleased to have you here. Before you get really deep into it, I want to ask you about this one of your recent books, The Boy from the Woods. You have a kind of a character in there. You sort of a little bit of a political push in that book in a way that's maybe a little different than the past for you too.
Yeah, it really was more, I try to write modern novels, and it was more about the constant disinformation, the trolls, the bots, the lies, the fake news. there used to be a time you and I could, you could argue about tax cuts or how much to do with the foreign or how much money to put here and there. But it seems like at this stage of the game, we're dealing with two separate realities. It's like we're both standing on the edge of a building, and one of us is saying there's no such thing as gravity. So it's like harder. That was sort of what I wanted to express here, is that kind of extremism. It's just bad for everybody.
It is. It's bad for everybody. It's so dangerous for our country, and I'm kind of happy that you brought up just the concept of extremism in and of itself, because it's not it's not a Republican or a Democratic thing.
Yep.
We've seen this in our country over the years from different sources, but whenever the extreme of either right or left, kind of takes over, it's not just that it's divisive, but it becomes dangerous.
Well, it's the shoehorn, the horseshoe effect of politics, which most people know about it. The far right and the far left, it starts to turn, and they become something very far away from the right and left centers, and something extraordinarily dangerous. And America's always worked its best when we've stayed as kind of, the far right and the far left would only go this far. Other countries, it can go this far. But with us, it's only gone this far. And I think in the case of the right now, we're in a very dangerous position, which of course means there'll be a left reaction. So that's the danger.
And Lisa, who's with us today, I say, Lisa, you're an independent. This is your category. This is your country. This is your category. This more centrist approach to things.
Right. Yeah, and it's deeply troubling, because in the past we have always had a president who, regardless of whether or not we politically agreed or had policy differences with whoever was in the White House, there was at least the fundamental belief that the person was not lying to us nearly every time so far he opened his mouth, and that we could trust in the information being based in reality. And between Trump and social media, reality has been bent so far from anything that's recognizable, and it's not just bent in one direction, as you were saying. It's being bent in two different directions, and now those conversations have become even more difficult to find common ground, because we're coming from two different worlds. Do you have thoughts on how we begin to mend that bridge?
I think Joe Biden. I think Joe is still a little bit naive, quite frankly, in the fact that you can talk to the other side, which is kind of nice. My first election I voted, I was 18 years old, for Ronald Reagan. And there's never been a time in my life where I didn't disagree with a politician, didn't speak out when a guy I supported did something wrong. You never see his supporters come out and say something they don't like about him. That they kept him. If they put his feet to the fire, because it's really your supporters who are supposed to do that, right? They don't, and that's, I think, part of the problem. For every, we just had Governor Christine Todd Whitman on, who I adore. I think she's a great governor. I've loved my conversations with her, even in recent years. She's just great. But if she did something I disagreed with, I'd let her know. And even if I was a supporter, and we don't have that kind of dialogue now. I compare it to the Yankees and the Red Sox, right? If you're a Yankees fan and you find out that your manager is a cheater and his first baseman beats his wife and his second baseman is a thief or whatever else, you won't become a Red Sox fan. In politics are not sports. We shouldn't be so tribal. We have to go after sometimes and correct. And that whole thing, I think now, it's gone. Where we just aren't shouting and we're talking to one another. And so I do think Biden is naivete, and I know I'm probably talking for all of us, I think we were all naive, really, to how cruel, evil, unkind people can be before this election. I write books about villains. I have villains in every book, and I've been naive about how bad, and I've been working too hard on making my villains realistic. And I think so we need that kind of unity to bring the country back together again, and to get this out of the way.
And I think you bring up something that's so important for us. You talk about how mean and how nasty, people can be and they've become. We have a president who's made that okay. And that's what we're
Yeah.
not accustomed to in this country. He's made it okay to decide that you're just not going to speak to a close family member ever again because they don't happen to like Donald Trump. He's made it okay to be racist and bigoted and to be loud about it. He's made all of these things that we always have understood are not okay. Suddenly he wants us to, to embrace it and make it all right for everybody. So, and I mean, I could go through a long list of a thousand reasons why I have never supported Donald Trump in the past. But was there a moment for you, Harlan? Was there like a particular action, a particular policy, or something that where you said, "Okay, this is just a bridge too far for me"?
Well, being in New York, New Jersey, and I've seen Donald Trump my whole life, and so it didn't really. Unfortunately, I was never a supporter. I saw this coming early on. I had hopes because ideologically he's empty. I mean, there's nothing there. So ideologically, maybe he could have been pushed into being more competent, or he would say, you know what, I managed to kind of con my way in. I'm here. I'm in the White House. Doesn't that move you? Doesn't that make you want to do better and try to do right and do good? It just didn't happen. I mean, He's just not capable. I don't even think it's his fault. He's just not capable. I think you mentioned before about these other presidents. Every other president that we've had, disagree with them. They made mistakes. Some of them did lie or whatever else. But you had a basic feeling that they were wanted the best interest of the total American people. That the job put that inside of their hearts. I don't really feel that at all here. It's just it's hard to trust anything he says because you just think that there's only self-interest there. So it makes it very, very difficult. And it makes dialogue. I miss the dialogue. As I said, it's like we're both standing on the edge of a cliff, and the other person's trying to pull you off and insisting there's no such thing as gravity. You're like, of course there's gravity. Here, I'll drop a rock and show you. Oh, well, that's a rock. A person won't fall. Well, here's a person who's falling. Well, we won't fall. You can't even. There's not a common place to start those kind of discussions. I think, we all. I want to wake up and be bored. I want to look at Twitter and be bored one morning, don't you? I want normalcy. I want decency again. I just want to hang with my friends, right? And not to think about this. Let the people who are smarter than I do handle that stuff.
You want to wake up and have nothing better to do than go read a good mystery thriller, right?
Yeah, it's hurting my business. Come on. It's hard for me to keep up with some of these plot twists.
And you just mentioned hurting your business, so I really want to call this out and compliment you and thank you for taking a really brave stand. There are far too many people who have put their own personal interests ahead of the greater good and tried to preserve, whether it's someone like Lindsey Graham, we just saw it in that Lincoln Project spot, who's really willing to say anything as long as he can hang on to power, and to take a principled stand when you're putting something on the line, as you are, because not all of your readers are going to agree with the position that you're taking. I have to commend you for it and thank you.
Well, thanks. But it's really not much. But second of all, I don't want to lose readers, not really for financial reasons, just because I love that connection, and that's the way that we can reach across the border. I mean, reading in general gives people empathy, and it's one thing I think both sides are lacking. You were mentioning before the nickname, Little Marco and Lion Ted and things like that, things that we would have scoffed at now, we're doing. It's really kind of affected us too. We are all of a sudden interested in crowd sizes. That was something laughable 4 years ago. Who cares how many people show up and hang in a hangar for either politician? What does that tell us? I mean, those are zealots. Who wants those people anyway? That wasn't America. That wasn't the America. The bring back the America that I love. That wasn't it. Was it? Do we have corruption? Do we have problems? Do we have serious issues that we have now seen with racism and sexism that we were ignoring? Yes, and let's address them as one, and with the unified voice, and not being as General Mattis said, divisive. Mattis said that. That's not us. Matt is the one who worries about. Mattis worries the one divisive. Listen to Matt. You know how many people? Mattis, Kelly, Tillerson, Bolton. You know you have Miles Taylor now. You have his own sister. How many people need to speak up before you just say let's just try another track? It's okay.
It does, and I, oh my gosh, I love that. Let's just try. It's okay to do something different. It's okay to try, because that's our message here at the Lincoln Project, is that it's okay to break from your party or to break from how you usually vote or what your family is going to do. Let's look at this and be honest with ourselves about what we're really facing here and try something different. So, Harlan, I'm so happy that you're with us today. I really appreciate you giving us time. I'm going to ask you one last question. I don't know if you realize that today is National Voter Registration Day. Are you registered to vote, and do you have a plan for making sure that your ballot is counted?
Oh, yes and yes. Again, because I live in a nice suburban community, it's so easy for me to vote. That's a huge, huge problem. It's not fair. And I've never waited more than 5 minutes to vote. Never in my life have I waited more than 5 minutes to vote. And that's how it should be for everybody. And that's something that we need to correct as well.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's another area where
every American on right or left can agree with that. I hope we all agree with that. If you can't, we have a
and
problem.
this president has gone out of his way to try to manipulate, those, some of the weaknesses in the system, or to find ways to try to intimidate the vote, try to silence the vote in so many cases. So I think that's a really important point that you make there. So Harlan, thank you so much for being with us. It's really been a pleasure.
Thanks. It was really nice to see everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. So you know what I got to say, Lisa, I loved what he was saying about the like the naivete out there, like and because what it made me think about was, we never believed that we would have a president that, even if we really disagreed with him or thought that his policies were not right for the country, we never believed that the United States of America would have a president whose goal was to be damaging and divisive and dangerous, and that was what his purpose was. And I think that's a big part of what people get stuck with. Like, they just can't wrap their heads around that idea.
Yeah, it's I have never had the feeling before having a president, and he's been very overt about it, that he does feel he's the president of only some states. He isn't the president of the United States of America. He's the president of his base. And so everything he does is geared back toward his base. But, Harlan just mentioned how easy it is for him to vote, and how many obstacles are being put in the way of people voting. And you really have to do some soul searching as a politician about if your message is resonating so little that the way you need to win elections is to attempt to suppress vote or confuse voters so they have difficulty figuring out how it is they're supposed to vote, which is why, one of the reasons it's so important what we're talking about here, and what the Lincoln Project has available on their website to help people sort through the confusion of registering to vote and how you vote. It's different in every state. But man, if you are having to try to put your foot on the scale to be able to win, then maybe you don't have a message, you're not putting forward policies that are what we need for the majority of the country, or you wouldn't be a president who couldn't win the popular vote.
It would be nice to have a president who cared about that sort of thing. Folks, you are watching Vote for America. We're so happy to have you with us. We're going to be right back, but first, here's a little bit more from the Lincoln Project.
Small businesses everywhere are closing their doors, and only the large businesses and Trump's cronies can receive any real tangible help. And every small business that closes represents an American losing their life's work, their investments, and their savings. And I can tell you from personal experience, because my own personal business is gone. It's done for. All my hard work, all my investment, all my planning, it's history because of the COVID pandemic and the way that Trump failed to manage it. And my personal finances are wrecked, and the future is more uncertain than ever before. And it breaks my heart to see so many other people in every state of the country going through the exact same thing, because there's no rich benefactor to bail us out. We're on our own. This country has never been so divided. And the global community has lost all respect for us because they see what a hateful nation we have become. And so I'm going to ask everyone, please don't vote third party. We need Biden and Harris to win. And I know they're not perfect. And I don't agree with all their philosophies, but they're decent people. And you can tell they care. And once they're elected, things can only get better. And Trump and his supporters can go back to the racist swamp where they belong. Please vote for Biden and Harris. Thank you.
The South is not the South anymore. When you look at the sheer amount of college-educated voters, and when you look at who's moving in, there's actually a running joke in North Carolina. There's a city called Cary, which they say stands for Containment Area for Relocated Yankees. And so, as that continues to happen in Cary, in Charlotte, in Raleigh, in Wilmington, in Asheville, the state is changing. And one area of opportunity for us specifically is that in the Sun Belt, college-educated white voters support Donald Trump still slightly by about 8-9 points. In the Rust Belt, college-educated white voters tend to support Joe Biden. So that shifting demographics that Mike is talking about, there is more opportunity to pick up voters in the Sun Belt as a result of that.
Thanks for staying with us. You're watching Vote for America. You can join us on social media with a hashtag Vote for America. We want to have you join the conversation. We're going to be here with you from now until Election Day. We want to know what your concerns are. We want to know what you're worried about. We want to make sure that we're having a conversation with you that will help you get all the information you need to make informed decisions before you cast your vote. And I have to say, I'm really particularly excited about this next guest. Really happy to have this gentleman with us. Joshua Lee is a disabled veteran. He lives in a small town in Missouri, works in a shop where they sell Donald Trump 2020 signs and other types of things. And he actually voted for Donald Trump in 2016. But he's got a different thought about how he's going to vote this year. And so I'm really happy to welcome today Joshua Lee. Joshua, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Jennifer. It really means a lot for me to be able to be on this show.
Well, it means a lot to me to have you here. I want to just start by telling you thank you so much for your service. I don't think that we say it often enough that there are so few people out there who step up and volunteer, and so many of us who benefit from that service. And honestly, it really touches me. As a military mom, I'm always so happy to welcome veterans and military to the show. And I just want to say it as sincerely as I can. Thank you so much for your service.
Well, thank you. That appreciation really means a lot both to myself and my fellow veterans. Thank you.
Great. I'm glad to hear that. And we're going to say it even more often. Joshua, I want to talk to you a little bit about Donald Trump. And you and I are both Republicans, and we're living in a world where the majority of our fellow Republicans kind of don't see the world the same way we do when it comes to Donald Trump. And you're part of a group of people who traditionally vote Republican, frankly, and being a veteran, a member of the military. But you've decided that that's not your path this year, is it?
No, it's absolutely not. This year, I really feel that the election is a referendum on the future that we can offer to our children. And I really, in no way, shape, or form, think that Donald Trump can provide a future that will make my children happier or allow their potential for growth to actually bloom and blossom. No.
Yeah, it's about, I'd love to hear you say that, because it really is about our kids. And I've said that all along, and long before Donald Trump came on the scene, like anything I've ever done in politics has been about wanting to make a better world for my kids, and wanting to make sure that, those, not just those foundational principles, but those benefits that we all had growing up, believing in, a freer America, an America of opportunity for all. And I assume, with real respect, that when you voted for Donald Trump in 2016, I'm sure you believed that that was what he was going to bring to the table as well. What was
You
it back
know,
in 2016 that drew you in?
honestly, what really drew me in 2016 wasn't that I believed in him or most of the policies he espoused. What really drew me in 2016 is the fact that I felt he would amplify the weaknesses present in the GOP, and I felt that he would drag out into the light the rot and corruption that has really suffused this party I used to be so proud of. And you know what? He has done an admirable job of that in the last 4 years, but it's time for him to go. We need someone like Joe Biden on hand that people respect, they trust. His worst political enemies flat out say they respect him as a man. They've got nothing to say against Joe Biden, the person. I want a good guy in office. I want someone who genuinely cares about the future he offers our children, not just the future he offers his best friends and his cronies on Wall Street.
I think that's a great point, because so much of Donald Trump's 2016 campaign was about drain the swamp. And not only,
That's
it
all
feels
he
like the
talked about.
swamp has gotten deeper. It feels like the swamp has gotten deeper in these past 4 years.
You know, it really has. And a lot of my fellow Republicans want to ride the Trump train. And I guess it's kind of like a gambler in a casino. Keep throwing good money after bad. If I just keep playing, eventually I'll strike it big, right? I've already invested so much energy into this candidate that no matter what he does, no matter which one of his political cronies he appoints over the head of whichever departments, well, then he's just draining the swamp. I mean, as you talked about earlier, we're celebrating the 50th year of the EPA, and he installs someone in charge of it that doesn't even believe it should exist and tries to actively cut it. What kind of a legacy is that?
I think that's a great point. And we, not just the EPA, we've seen this kind of cronyism in, in the postal service. We've seen it in really important, national security positions and Department of Defense positions in areas where it's really done damage to the country. I wanted to ask you about, is that your dog? Did I just,
Not mine.
That would be mine.
so, oh, good. I'm sorry. This is live
I
TV.
apologize.
Brave new
We're
world.
coming to you
Brave new
live on
world.
YouTube, and when there are dogs in the house, you hear the dogs in the house. One of the things that I really wanted to get a chance to talk to you about, though, is that really recently, the president, I think, kind of revealed his heart on veterans and folks who serve in the military. He's kind of used them, in my opinion, for so long, like that these are my veterans. That somehow he was, doing more for veterans, even though we know his policies have not. But we've learned recently that off the record, he refers to veterans as losers and idiots, and
Mm-hmm.
doesn't understand, what's in it for them. Why do they do this?
Mm-hmm.
And I have to tell you, in all seriousness, I found it personally hurtful, because my son is a veteran, because so many members of my family are veterans, that they're not idiots. And I can't imagine what the conversations have been like between you and some of your fellow veterans since learning that, since hearing those comments from the president.
You know, there's not really a good way to describe it. Revolt would be a good way. Not, I find his comments revolting. I'm not advocating for revolt. I find his comments and his attitude absolutely revolting, and I find it appalling to the highest order. A man that has been using our military as a political prop since the day he took office, since the day he wanted a military parade like Kim Jong-un of North Korea has, just to celebrate the fact that he's president. A man that has forced our nation's military to act as peacekeepers against their own citizens, and then turns around and calls them losers and suckers for thinking of something greater than themselves. I mean, that just goes to show you the moral character and fiber of this man that supposedly is the leader of this country. That man's no leader. He's a parasite, he's a rot, and he needs to be cut out.
Yeah, and spread the word for us. Spread the word among your fellow veterans. The overwhelming majority of Americans, I think, have just the deepest, most sincere gratitude for those
Mm-hmm.
who serve and those who sacrifice on our behalf. He does not
I've heard from
represent
a
the
lot.
American people when he says that.
He does not, and I've actually heard that from a lot of my fellow veterans. That before now, I had a lot of veteran friends that He lost their support due to his handling of the coronavirus, the way he's treated veterans with the coronavirus, the fact that the VA hospitals are the ones going to be doing clinical trials on the vaccines, and now us veterans, who are already quite used to the fact that we were used to experimental drugs and vaccines all over every time we were deployed, and now you're saying that when the VA hospital sick with coronavirus, you're going to start injecting us with this thing that you don't know if it's going to even work. We've had enough of being experimented on in the military. We don't want any more while we're at the hospital trying to get treated. You know what I mean? So that handling of the coronavirus really blew away a lot of my veteran buddies. And then when he stepped up with those words, he's lost a lot of support here in this deep red state of Missouri with the deep red veterans who are just walking away going, I can't handle this. I'm not going to say, I'm working with them, hoping to convince them to understand that Joe Biden is a good man who respects our military, who respects our children, who respects our future. But at the very least, I know he's lost the vote of a lot of veterans.
Yeah, you're informing me today, Joshua. I didn't know about the part of the vaccination, trials being brought to the VA hospitals. I wasn't aware of that.
Now,
And you just got,
that's based on a couple of articles I'd read. I don't think they're currently underway, but I believe that's the plan, is to first trial it on the veterans, and it's being touted as we're trying to save the weakest and most, we're trying to help the veterans first. But you don't try to help veterans first by giving them an unproven, untested vaccine as part of phase 3 clinical trials when we already have so many physical and mental health issues already. That is probably one of the worst ideas I've ever heard.
yeah, it's offensive on so many levels. I'm having trouble processing it as I listen to you talk about it, especially when you talk about our veterans, our military have already been put in this position so many times in the past. To your point, when they've been, untested vaccines and other, even beyond that, other stories that are so much worse than worse than that. It's really I'm having trouble moving on from it. That these
It's
people who have
disgusting. It's
dedicated their
terrifying.
lives. It is terrifying. It's terrifying. I agree. It is terrifying. So, Joshua, I know that you work in a place where there's a lot of Trump exposure. Where you work, there are, and they sell Trump items, and certainly you have friends and people in your circle who are Trump supporters. Tell me
I
just a
do.
little bit about some of those conversations. How does that go when you're talking to somebody who kind of assumes that you will naturally be a Trump supporter, and then sort of go down that conversational path where you're not and they are?
Well, it's usually quite the shock for most people when a person with my background steps up and say, well, I used to vote for him. Let me tell you why I'm not going to again. And just that simple shock of that inherent respect that veterans bring to the table, plus I used to vote for him, this time I'm not, that can actually open up a lot more conversations than I ever thought it would. Whether or not they agree with my stances, a lot of the people in this area are willing to give me the respect to at least listen to my stances. And you know what? Here I am planting a seed. I can't promise it'll grow. I don't know what kind of soil it's in, but here's a seed. Go look at it for yourself.
You know what? I love that
I,
because so much of what we're doing. Oh, I'm sorry. I love that because so much of what we're doing here is trying to make sure that people have the confidence, the language and the confidence to go out and continue to have these conversations. One of the things we've lost in our country is the ability to just be dignified and respectful toward each other when we disagree about something. So to hear you talk about it that way, I think is really encouraging. Joshua, I just want to thank.
Sorry. I was responding to
Go
you.
ahead.
It is encouraging and it is fun. There, of course, as with any people, there are going to be some that when you try to bring up a conversation, if they hear your viewpoint, they start attacking you because they can't iterate why they feel the way they do or why they're going to vote the way they will. So it's easier just to attack the other person. And we see that inherent in our own president. So there is a certain core element of his base that follows that tack. And instead of saying what they're for or what they can do, they only talk about how bad the other people are for not agreeing with them. And that's a challenge that I don't think you can ever truly overcome.
And that's what I love when you talk about Joe Biden and you talk about being for him. He is a decent
Correct.
man. He is a good man. You're not
Correct.
asking people to choose the lesser of two evils. You're asking people to choose a good, decent person to step in and become the leader of our country. So, Joshua, I don't know if you realize it is National Voter Registration Day today. So I just need to ask you, are you registered to vote? Do you know where you're going to vote? Do you have a plan in place to make sure your ballot is counted?
Yes, I do. I do know I am registered to vote. I vote at the same place I have ever since I bought this home 8 years ago. Um, the only plan I have in place to make sure my ballot is counted is to trust the system, go in there, fill out the ballot, follow the directions, and stick it in the machine. I mean, I don't think
Beautiful.
our systems are rife with election fraud. I don't think there's any evidence pointing to mass mishandling of ballots. There are a few people in a few states that have made some mistakes on the job, but I've made mistakes on my jobs. I can't fault someone for that. I
You're
trust
right.
that our
And we
system is
know,
going to work the way it's intended.
and every time it has ever been audited, we've seen that is the truth, that the election system in our country is trustworthy and works for everybody. So as long as you don't get stuck in one of this president's attempts to try to suppress the vote. So I'm just
Correct.
really happy to I'm really happy to have had you with us today, Joshua. Thank you so much for sharing your story. It's been a pleasure, and I hope that you will continue to get out there and spread the word for Joe Biden.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me
Fantastic.
on here.
Thank
I
you.
truly appreciate it.
And Joshua, I just want to say it again. Thank you so much for your service. Thank you. Without people like you who are willing to do what you do, the whole idea of free and fair elections would have been destroyed, many years ago, a long time ago. So thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thanks for the appreciation. Have fun.
Thank you. Take care. So Joshua Lee, Lisa, I got to tell you, he really kind of got me when he talked about the idea of, that the veterans were upset about even the idea, even the suggestion that vaccines might be, that the patients in the VA would be used as kind of test subjects for the vaccine. I had no idea that that was part of the conversation, and it is such a demeaning. And I think the word that Joshua used, abuse, abuse of our veterans. It's unbelievable to me.
Yeah, it's really incredible. It's not something I had heard before either. It's certainly something we know has happened in the past. But for a president who constantly wants to say what a champion he is for our veterans and for the military,
Right.
to consider doing this sort of thing, but to also to call these people suckers and losers who have been willing to put their lives on the line and commit their lives to protecting this country and protecting our democracy, and to have someone with the background of Donald Trump having a hand in how these individuals are now being treated who have given so much for us. It's just completely disgraceful that it continues to happen, that we don't have the investigations that we should have when we hear that there are Russian bounties on our soldiers' heads. It's just but when we hear someone come out and speak the way he just did, and Joshua has such a position to speak from, such a platform that does have so much respect and so much authority, and people will really listen. And there are people like that in all walks of life. And it's one of the exciting things about this program is that we are having an opportunity to encourage people. Certainly, Joshua didn't need any encouragement, but each of the guests that we've had on the show today have been these individuals willing to put themselves out and have those really difficult conversations at times and keep trying to move the bar, to open other people's eyes and build support so that we are going to have a new president in the White House come the end of January.
And that is what this is all about. You're absolutely right about that. It's great to see other people feel empowered to get out there and just tell their story. And that's what we hope this show will do for everybody who's watching, so that they can as well. Lisa, thank you so much for being with us today. I love having you. This is going to be a lot of fun. Folks, you're watching the first ever episode Vote for America. It's only going to get better from here. We're going to get better at what we're doing.
We might not always have a dog barking in the background.
We might not always have a dog barking in the background, but it won't be quite as much fun if there's not a dog barking in the background, will it? But
I won't tell him that.
This is real life. This is what it is. Like I said, this is our first episode. We're really happy that you have been here with us. It is Vote for America. You're watching Vote for America. We're going to be here live with you every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 10:30 a.m. Pacific Time. We hope that you will continue to come back and join us. You can watch us on the LPTV channel on YouTube. You're on the LPTV Facebook page, the LPTV Twitter feed, or you can watch us at our website, lincolnproject.us. But more importantly, we want you to join the conversation. And you can do that by calling 201-503-4585 and leave us a message there. We really care about what it is you're concerned about right now. We want you to be part of this conversation. You can join us on social media using the hashtag Vote for America as well. If you have questions, if you have concerns, if you have fears, we want to make sure that we're here for you to have those conversations with as we get closer and closer to Election Day. So I just want to thank you for being with us today. I'm Jennifer Horn. I'm one of the co-founders of the Lincoln Project, and I'm here today because I believe in our country. I am optimistic that not only will we continue to be a great nation that embraces and advances the principles of freedom and opportunity, but that we will become better, that we will grow and become a better nation, that our children and our grandchildren will have the opportunities that we never had. But I know that that can't happen if Donald Trump remains in the White House. Probably the most dangerous president, in my opinion, that our country has ever seen. So I'm grateful that you're here, that you're joining this effort, that we're all going to come together and be part of making sure that Joe Biden becomes president on November 3rd of 2020. And in the meantime, listen, I hope you have a great day, and I look forward to seeing you back here on Thursday. Thank you so much for tuning in.